Welcome to the Audience Converter Podcast, the podcast for converting your audience from strangers to loyal fans. We dive deep and discuss how entrepreneurs, consultants, and coaches can level up their business to help more people in the world. Now here's your host, the creator of the Audience Conversion Method, Kimberly Weitkamp.
Are you a little lost when it comes to marketing? Not sure where to spend your time, how to bring in the right people, or even where to get started? You know you should be doing it, but you just can't manage to figure out a method that actually works for you and your business. Join me at Audience Conversion Live happening February 23rd through the 25th, where we're going to dive deep into the audience conversion method, give you a strategy to get started with your marketing today, and you'll get the copy written for the beginning of your customer's journey. That includes a landing page, an email sequence, and what's popularly known as a lead magnet. Join me and check it out at theaudienceconverter.com/live. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Audience Converter Podcast for community leaders. I'm Kimberly Weitkamp, your host, conversion copywriter, and marketing strategist. And today we're talking about two very important and intertwined topics, which is positioning yourself in the right way with your marketing and how to put it onto your website so that it actually does what you want it to do. And of course, to help me out with this, I have a wonderful, amazing guest in the guest seat today. His name is Alastair McDermott, and he's from Ireland, so I'm just loving listening to his accent, I must say. And he helps independent consultants and experts generate more leads without having to beg for referrals or spend spammy LinkedIn messages, which, I am not a fan of either. So I'm super excited to talk with Alastair. He's a former software engineer, and now he's a B2B marketing consultant. He built his first website, wait for it, on Geocities, which I don't know if all of you remember. I remember, and that design was very, very interesting, let me say, in the before time of 1996, and he's been hooked on websites ever since. So Alastair, I want to say thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kimberly. I'm delighted to be here.
Fantastic. So, before we dive into websites and how to use them to properly position you, I want to learn more about this path you took from building stuff on Geocities to becoming a B2B marketing consultant. So tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming an entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, I was in college back in 1996 when I was doing software engineering, software development. And so one thing that I did as kind of for fun was there was this new thing called the internet. And so I started building websites just for fun. And that was interesting. And funny enough, I actually went then into the software. I didn't do much more on websites. I kind of stopped building websites in around 2000 and only got back into it about 5 years later.
Wow. 5 years, in the world of online, that's a huge gap.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's just, it was, and like things were changing so much back then. When I got back into it 5 years later, this new thing had just come around called WordPress. And I started using that, I think at the end of 2004, started 2005. And that became something I love building websites in. And so I kind of got on that train quite early.
Yes, I will say my first website was on WordPress. My brother-in-law, who is an IT person as well, set it up for me. And it was a blog, documenting my travels across the great nation of China.
Wow,
so
cool.
It was mostly just a way to keep in touch with people. But I was like, ooh, there's this new thing out there. And it's easy for me to just type it up and press send. But man, has it come a long way since.
Well, absolutely. It's massive now. It's a lot more complex now, but it's still a very good system.
Absolutely. A great system. So you went from building websites for fun, then you kind of dropped off, came back to it later, and now you help B2B companies as a marketing consultant. So Tell me a little bit about, how you take that knowledge of being a software engineer and apply it to people who are looking to build those websites.
Yeah, well, so first off, back when I started building websites in 1996, 2000, you actually needed to be a software engineer to build a website back then because we didn't have tools like WordPress, which came along and made it a lot easier. So I started out kind of knowing the nuts and bolts behind the scenes of websites, and that was quite in demand back then as well. When I when I started building websites and I left my corporate programming job and went out on my own, I didn't actually start out doing websites straight away. I started out in the world of SEO, search engine optimization, which I enjoyed because, again, back then it was very technical. And but what I found was that people just kept asking me for websites. Because I just kept getting asked for them and people wanted to pay me to build them websites. That's what I did. And from that, when you're building a website for somebody, the way I view it is you're actually building an avatar of their business, or a marketing avatar of their business. So you really need to understand their business very well, and you need to understand what they're trying to do from a marketing strategy point of view. And if you as a web designer don't understand that, and if the business owner doesn't understand that, then you end up with a very poor website, one that's just very ineffective. So somebody has to bring that to the table. And so that's how I got into the kind of the marketing side. And then the B2B marketing side is just because I prefer B2B marketing. I find it more interesting than B2C. It's just a kind of a personal taste thing. But that's how I kind of got my marketing skills developed over time as I built more and more websites and realized, hey, if the business owner doesn't know what they're doing here, then I've got to bring that to the table.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point that you just made, which was, if you don't have a clear idea, right, of your business and of your marketing, building a website kind of doesn't really work because you need to really understand the business and really understand who you're talking to as you build out the website. So, with both websites and marketing, I like that you mentioned you started with SEO, right? Because it was super technical, and websites back then you had to be an engineer to be able to build them. And now we've got these things where you literally drag and drop, right? You drag and drop and build whatever you want it to look like, essentially. So tell me a little bit about, the importance of, you had briefly mentioned it, that you really need to understand your business and your marketing plan before building out that website. So what's kind of like that first step for people?
Yeah. So, I guess the actual building of the website has become a bit commoditized now. And it's possible for anybody to build a website, if they have the knowledge, and the tools don't get in the way now, but you still need to know what you're doing. And I mean, I know you have a copywriting background. It's really important what you actually write on your website, the text that you're using on there. And that text typically is what's going to position you. And this is why I think B2B stuff a bit more interesting. In the world of B2C, if you're selling, a pair of Nike, or, you sell iPhones or whatever, you can put a picture of the product that you sell up on your website and people will know what you sell. But if you're selling a professional service, B2B, it's usually a bit more nuanced than that. You need to explain it a bit more. It's usually a bit more complex. And that's where your positioning, it really makes a big difference. And I think that's where the messaging, some people call it the copy, some people call it, that's where that really comes into play, and having that kind of strategy and understanding what you're actually putting down. And so I think it goes back to having a really clear understanding of what you do, who you do it for. And I like to use a value proposition or a positioning statement for that.
Absolutely. I mean, as a copywriter, right, I definitely agree that the words you put out there are what's going to help you stand out. I mean, as you've mentioned, right, building the website has become commoditized. A lot of people decide to do it themselves, or they do hand it off to somebody, but it's mostly because they don't want to do it, not because they couldn't do it because of the advances in the technology. But I do think that so many people are focused on, it needs to look pretty, that they forget you really need to communicate to the people who are visiting your site the importance and how you are different. What is it that you do? Who do you serve? And how is it that what you're doing is different? So do you have any hacks or tips or tricks to make sure that you're getting your positioning right first?
Well, I like to go back to absolute basics, and I like to go back to a really simple positioning statement, which is just, we help these people solve this problem. And just name who you're helping and what you're doing for them. And there's a couple of different variations on that. We help these people solve this problem. We help these people get this result. And you can also add in by doing this so that they can do this. And what that gives you is that gives you just like a little template, and you fill in the blanks on that. And that gives you something that can be the fulcrum of your entire marketing strategy. So everything else hinges on that. And what that allows you to do then is you say, okay, is this podcast that I'm going on, or is this blog post that I'm writing, does it help this audience with solve this problem? And if it doesn't, then maybe we should be spending our time or our money on something else. And so that for me is a really simple, effective tool that you can use, is this simple format of positioning statement. And actually, I like to put that front and center on a website homepage, particularly if it's some sort of professional service where it's not really clear, from the business name, or, you see these photographs of people shaking hands or sitting around a board table. That doesn't really help people understand what the business is about. Whereas a simple statement like that really can help the visitor to understand that they're in the right place for them.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with the popularity of using graphics tools and using stock photography, I've been on so many websites where I've seen the exact same image when it's talking about blogging or talking about business. It's like this little computer on a desk with like a notepad next to it, which is great. It kind of matches what you're talking about, but you really do need that statement to explain to people what it is that you're doing, because that's not enough to tell people. Okay, so it's really important, obviously, to get your positioning right and to create that value statement. But what happens if you get it wrong?
So first of all, I'll say that I think everybody will get it wrong. So don't worry about getting it wrong, because you probably will. Positioning statement is something that evolves over time. And it's something, I would go back to it maybe every month or every quarter and look at it and say, okay, I'm going to tweak the language here, tweak the language there. And I have a video on my YouTube channel where I walk through, I have a positioning history spreadsheet where I walk through 14 years of my business, what my positioning was at the time and how it developed over time. So it's something that changes. So don't worry about getting it wrong. But I would say, I would urge you to start working on it. It is really important, because it allows you, once you have that, everything else kind of fits into place. It is the kind of the hinge, or the center cogwheel that everything else turns on. So, I think it's really important, particularly in those businesses where what you do needs a little bit of explanation.
I couldn't agree more. And I love that you said everyone's going to get it wrong, because we have this kind of mental block for a lot of us, right? And I think part of it's just the way that we're taught in school is failure is bad, or getting something wrong is bad. But honestly, as a business owner, and of course for the people you serve as well, both groups are evolving over time, right? The place I started at as a copywriter is completely different now than it was 5 years ago. I started in a completely different industry. I actually wrote for the software industry, specifically for travel software companies. And I did that for several years. And now I serve a completely different audience. So the way that you position yourself is going to change over time. And that's a good thing, because it means you're constantly growing.
Yeah. And sometimes that's because you've decided to change your business, or sometimes that's just because you've gotten a little bit more specific about the wording of who you're targeting, or what the precise service is, or the precise result or problem that you're solving. Yeah, I think it's really important. I like to have it front and center on the homepage of a website. I think it just helps to center visitors when they arrive. They know exactly if you can help them or if you're not for them, which is just as important. And they also know who you help. If you don't help them, they might be able to refer somebody to you because they know who you can help.
Definitely. And I think that's a missed opportunity for a lot of people, is the idea that, if I get it too specific, then people who land here, maybe I could help them in some way. But the reality is you want to be helping that specific person and making it clear enough to where other people can think of you if they know somebody who is looking for your help.
Yeah. And if you have something like, we help dentists with Facebook marketing. If you have something like that on your website, and a general practitioner, GP doctor comes along and they see that, they may decide to contact you anyway, even though you say dentists on there, and you don't have to turn them away. There's no specialization police who come along and say you have to turn these people away. But having that specific calling out makes every dentist who sees that web page, makes them, or sees that text, it makes them feel this is for us. This is exactly who we are for, you know?
Absolutely. I love that idea of the specialization police, right? Because we have to remember that we get to choose who we take on as clients.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
You know, so if you get somebody who isn't your exact ideal avatar, but you like the project idea, or you like them, or you want to help them do what they're doing, there's nothing that says you can't take that project on. But when creating any kind of marketing, whether it's your website, whether it's social media, whether it's your email campaigns, whether it's figuring out, you know, am I going to launch a podcast? Every single part of your marketing strategy that you put into place needs to be speaking to the people you really are best suited to serve. Because if you know, I believe the phrase is, if you help everybody, you help nobody. You know, if you try and please everybody, you please nobody. So the more general your statements are, the less helpful they are.
Yeah, and so I'm a big fan of specialization. There's several different types of specialization you can go down. You can pick a platform, like say I'm a WordPress expert, for example, or you know, I'm a Facebook expert, a Facebook ads expert, or you can pick just a problem area, like we help businesses with social media advertising, or you know, we help businesses with branding and brand strategy. Or you can pick a specific vertical and do vertical specialization, a bit like what I've done with consultants. You can say we work only in this specific vertical. So we help energy companies, and, you know, and then you can cross those. You can have, we help energy companies with Facebook advertising. And that's getting really niche down, and that feels scary because you're turning away opportunity. But I bet you even just saying that statement, that will make those companies who do fit within that and who have that problem, that will make them really interested in talking to you, as opposed to the generalist who says, we help everybody with social media.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's one of the things I talk about a lot, is the importance of defining who you're going to serve, and then, you know, making the commitment to create the marketing that speaks to those people. You know, as you said, right? Anyone with social media, well, those are two really broad categories. But if you talk about energy companies with social media, then it's a much more narrow category, but it's also a lot more powerful, because anyone who comes to you, they're going to expect to pay for the value you can bring specifically to their type of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the example of energy companies, that's coming from a consultant who I interviewed, who had his firm of, I think he had 5 or 6 in total. They beat out PwC, who at the time had 250,000 staff, and they beat them out for a contract in the energy industry based on the fact that they were specialized. And PwC obviously is massive. But this tiny little firm of 6 people beat out, you know, one of these huge global multinationals. So it just shows you the effectiveness of specialization.
Absolutely. I love those kinds of stories, because it really brings home the idea that the importance of specialization is there. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier, right, is that your positioning statement is going to change. It's going to change with you. It's going to change with your audience. It's going to change with where you find you're best at working with, right? Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about, you know, you mentioned you had a video where you can people can see how your statement has changed. But how do you bring in people to you and then convert them with your own positioning statement?
So are you talking about my positioning statement now? If that's what you're talking about, yeah. So my positioning statement now is I help independent consultants what is it now, actually?
Uh-oh.
This is the problem. This is the problem when you change a positioning statement. But yeah, so I help independent consultants to generate more leads by upgrading their business development so that they can eliminate dependence on referrals. And that does change because I tweak those sentences on a regular basis. And in fact, I'm in the middle of tweaking it right now, which is why I'm getting myself a bit mixed. But what I'll say is the things that don't change is who I help and the basis of what I do. So I help independent consultants to generate more leads, and the other parts by doing this and so that they can get this, those are the parts that I change a bit more often now. I think it's important to settle on a specific target market, and I think it's important to name who your target market is in a way that they self-describe. And what I mean by that is I could say that I help B2B professional service providers. But there's no B2B professional service provider who thinks of themselves in that way. They think of themselves as a consultant. And other people, if I said to you, do you know any B2B professional service providers? You may think of that if that's the way your mind works. But normally it's easier if I said to you, do you know any independent consultants? That's going to trigger a thought process where you know somebody who fits in that bracket, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's my entire approach, right? With the audience conversion method is step one is you have to define your audience. If you don't know who you're talking to, then there's no point in trying to figure out exactly what you're going to offer or how you're going to create your entire marketing campaign. It was one of my biggest complaints with working in the industry I was working in, because often I would ask people, okay, who is your target? And the first answer I would get would be usually, oh, anybody, right? Anybody who's a hotel owner or something. I'm like, that's not an answer. And my second answer I would usually get would be something along the lines of, well, we work with hotels who have over 250 rooms. And I would explain to people, look, a hotel isn't going to read this. A hotel is a building. A person at that hotel is going to read it. Who is that person? Really defining who it is that they needed to be able to have that first conversation and have the final conversation with. So it's really important to be able to really define your target market first so that you know, who are these people? What are they like? Do you know anyone who fits that description? Then it makes it so much easier to create that positioning statement and, of course, create the rest of your marketing.
Yeah. The other thing about that is if you, this goes back to the vertical specialization thing, if they are in a vertical market, usually you can find out what conferences they go to because they collect, they hang around together. So you can find what conferences they go to, what their trade publications are, what email lists they subscribe to, who are the industry leaders, what books have they all read, because they tend to hang around together. It's much easier to find those people when they're hanging around together and they're quite similar. If you say, what books does everybody read? Then, it's impossible because it's everybody. So, having that specific, focus really helps to figure out what your marketing is going to be because you know what social media channels to go on.
Absolutely. And that's a really great segue to my next question, which is, it's really important to know where your people are hanging out so that then you can take them from not knowing who you are, from strangers to converting them to interested people and then to loyal fans. So tell me a little bit about where do you find your people and how do you convert them from strangers to loyal fans?
So now I go on LinkedIn. And that's where I like to hang out now. It used to be more Facebook. I've kind of personally moved away from Facebook a little bit. I'm not so keen on their business models and things like that. But also I found that, LinkedIn is where my target market are hanging around. And it's where, and it's just, I think it's a nicer platform. I don't think that, the tools of the platform are as good as on Facebook. Facebook's a lot more sophisticated in how you can target people with advertising and live streams and all that kind of stuff. But, LinkedIn is where my people are. So that's where I am. And what I do on there is I connect with people regularly. I post, different types of posts, text posts and video posts sometimes. And then I also sometimes link out to my email list and invite people to join that. So yeah, I've grown my audience quite significantly on LinkedIn. In about 3 or 4 months, I did a survey, which also had a connection request, and I grew my audience from 1,000 to 4,500 over about 3 or 4 months doing that. So that was probably growing a little bit too quickly, to be honest, because I got a slap from LinkedIn. But that was very effective in growing my audience and also got me a lot of information.
Absolutely. Wow. You're doing too well at growing your network. It's a good problem to have, I guess. But, it's a great, just really quick breakdown, right, of how this can really work because you've got your positioning statement. So you know exactly who you need to be connecting with on LinkedIn. And then you know what you're doing, right? And you know how you're going to help them. So that helps you craft that message and then really create that connection that brings them into your world, which is it's a great way of looking at it. And it's a great demonstration of the importance of positioning yourself in a way that people understand what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, it goes back to that positioning statement. It is the basic directions. You know, if you're on the East Coast US and you say, where are we going? Well, if you don't know where you're going, you can't set out. But if you're saying we're going to LA, it's like, okay, now we can decide which route we want to go. Do we want to go historic Route 66? Do we want to fly? Do we want to go up through the northernmost states? You know, do we want to drive through Canada? You can choose the route because you know what the target is. If you don't have that picked from the start, you can't move because you're trying to do everything. And what happens is you find people who don't have that clear positioning, and they're just trying things. I think somebody called it random acts of marketing, which I think is a great phrase because they're just trying everything and it's not working for them.
Definitely. I am well acquainted with people using random acts of marketing, or my more favorite term is the spray and pray method, which is basically, yeah. I'm going to try everything under the sun and hope one of them works. But when you have a targeted plan in place, it's the right first step to take. So, Alastair, I want to say thank you for coming on, for sharing your wisdom with us. And, you know, we've talked about so many different things today in terms of creating your positioning, how to use your website as the right positioning tool for your business. What would you say is that first step? What's the next action step for people to take right now?
If you don't have a positioning statement, then, so I have a website called marketingforconsultants.com. I write about a lot of this kind of stuff over there. You can look through my blog section for writing about this. I would say if you don't have a positioning statement, then I would spend some time, take a couple hours to work on that, and then come back to it later and just work on that positioning statement, run it by a few people to see does it make sense. If you do have a positioning statement, just go back and check it. Check, does it make sense? If you have a website and you have the words welcome to on your website, on your homepage, I would say replace that welcome to section with your positioning statement. Wherever it is, that's kind of just a basic thing that I like to see people do. Put your positioning statement in there. It'll help you a lot more. People don't need to be welcome to your website, but telling them they're in the right place for them will really help. And yeah, you can find out a lot more about this at marketingforconsultants.com. I have an email list on there. You're welcome to sign up, and I'll send you a few things, including about the positioning statement.
Fantastic. And of course, we covered the basic positioning statement you can get started with today earlier in the episode. And, you know, be sure to check out marketingforconsultants.com and get access to all of those free resources on the blog that Alastair has been talking about. So, Alastair, again, thank you so much for being here and for being on the show.
Thanks, Kimberly. Pleasure.
All right, everyone. Until next time, remember, keep calm and carry on.
Thanks for listening to the Audience Converter Podcast. For more information and important links about today's show or for access to our website, visit theaudienceconverter.com. Take a moment to rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.